Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are ASCE. We're here to talk about some FE and PE things that may be helpful for you as you think about your career and how you want to prepare. And I guess before we get started, we'll do a little bit of intro for us up here so you can know who it is that's speaking to you. So my name is Kevin Peterman. I'm a professional engineer. I work for LK and McLean Associates. We have two offices, one in Brookhaven and one in Hicksville. My niche is private land development, and I passed my PE exam in February of 22.
Yeah, you want to go down?
Hi, Pamela Dulce. I am a staff engineer with PW Grocer Consulting. I mainly work in construction management, and I passed my FE in that was the winter of 2021.
Everybody, my name is Tim Summer. I'm a staff engineer with PW Grocer in Bohemia. I mainly work in wastewater and stormwater projects. So a lot of CAD drafting, help with site plans, details, that kind of thing, construction documents. So yeah, I'm 17 months in, not too far removed from you all, from school. And yeah, it's been good. Member of ASCE as well. And yeah, excited to be here.
My name is Matt Dogerson. I'm with D&B Engineers and Architects. We're a mid-sized firm located in Woodbury, on Long Island, if you're all familiar with that. I am in the wastewater division, mostly do project management, design, construction management for wastewater infrastructure projects, Nassau County, Westchester County, some of the city, and some of the smaller districts on Long Island. I am a professional engineer as well, and I passed in October of 2021. And I've been at D&B for about 10 years. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Hill. I am a structural engineer for the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. I just recently passed the PE exam a week and a half ago, so technically I'm also the ASCE treasurer for the younger member committee here. And my focus with structural engineering is dealing with bridges, canals, bulkheads, anything that is non-road pavement related.
Hi everyone, my name is Curran Testa. I passed my PE exam last July, and I passed my FE the year before that, so July 2021. I currently am an assistant engineer with the New York State Department of Transportation. I've worked in construction and design. I'm currently in design. My focus is water resources, but since I'm with the DOT, I do focus on roads, drainage, and stuff like that.
I guess before we jump in, we just wanted to get an idea. How many of you are like in the phases of studying and preparing for your EIT? You just throw your hand up there for the FE, EIT.
What a book.
All right, that's a good first step. That's a good first step. So we have a lot of active students right now. Is that right? A lot of active students in here. Okay, so pretty much no one is ready to take the PE at this point. Is that right? Gotcha. Okay. Get started.
Yes, if anybody on the Zoom meeting or here has any questions as you're going along, just put them into the chat or raise your hand there and we'll check them as you go along.
That's probably a good spot to just start, I suppose. Okay. We kind of did the introductions already, so we're just
All right, so we're a little ahead of the game. All right, so this is basically my niche because I dealt with this particular chart way too much than what you're supposed to typically deal with. So are you guys accredited yet for engineering technology?
No.
No, not yet.
You're still in process of it?
Yeah, it should be coming next spring.
Okay, so then basically at this point you would just be looking in this very narrow column on the left side. You're in the middle here with engineering technology. Once you graduate, the way how the chart works is every year of education is 2 years work experience. New York is one of a handful of states that allows anyone to become a licensed engineer without needing any formal education. You could work for 12 years straight minimum to be able to get a PE. In regards to the education, every year of education is 2 years experience, with the exception of a master's degree. The entire master's program is worth 1 additional year experience. When you graduate or you're in your senior year of your program here, that midline there is the bare minimum qualification to take the FE exam. After that, since you guys would have the engineering technology, you would have a full 6 years minimum of work experience that has to be approved and reviewed by the New York State Office of Professions, and all that has to be endorsed from your bosses who are signed PEs or supervisors that you worked under that are PEs. It's a very long, tenuous process to do this. At least with the FE, it's a little more straightforward. I have all of the official documents here of what you do when you actually have to go for your licensing, and that's a lot more encumbersome. And you can get all this stuff on the state's website as well.
I have a question. So you have to have your work experience to take a PE. Does that experience count before you take your FE, or does it?
The
Like-
state does not like double dipping. So if you're working at an internship and you're still in school or whatnot, the state does not like that. They prefer anything after your degree to go towards the actual experience. It would be, you could attempt to do so. I don't know of any engineers that have attempted to do so. And if the state ever does approve of that, it would have to be a very, very rare circumstance to do so, because the state is one of the strictest states in regards to issuing licenses for professional engineers.
I have a question. Say if you're doing the dual degree, how does that work in the sense?
If you're doing it, your highest level degree type, so you could be Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Engineering Technology, and so on, depending on what it is and if it's accredited, your experience is going to be based off of the more, I should say, important ones, the more highly qualified ones. So if you're going for a BE and a BET, the BE is going to be the course that you're going to follow for the experience.
I think adding to that as well, if you were to pursue a master's, you can get credit for the master's, I believe.
For 1 year.
Yes, for 1 year. So that's easier if you're doing a 5-year track, because then basically you have 1 more year left of what would have been a 4-year program. You would be able to then get that master's and then get that 1 extra year. But if you do a full-blown master's program after your bachelor's, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because of the fact that you're not, those are going to be 2 other years of that could have been work experience that ends up going towards just 1 year's worth of equivalent experience with the master's.
But if it's got a chat question over it. So if you want to go into the military and be a civil engineer, would that count?
Yes, that actually would count. Believe it or not, from what I recall, New York, I think, has an exception in regards to military experience, where if you work for the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe that actually almost automatically qualifies you. Once you hit a certain minimum of working with them, that almost completely supersedes anything of the state's requirements, from what I recall. I'm not entirely sure. That would be a direct question that you would have to ask the Office of Professions about.
Good question.
That's probably post-doc. That military experience is probably post-doc.
Yes.
Do we have the ability to move the slides from the controller?
Let's see.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Not you, I'm just.
I wouldn't. You want to go next slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Fine. We're good? Great. Okay.
I'll be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. So for those of you, obviously, you're going to be taking the FE exam first. So to register for that, you have to go to the NCEES website. And you just kind of follow the instructions. It's not like super complicated. They're not going to make you jump through hoops. You just kind of go to the website, you make an account. You're going to pick out a testing center and just kind of pick the day that you want to do it. You have to make sure that you know all of the fees. It does cost money to take the exam. And also make sure that you read up on the reference materials. They do provide that for you once you create your account. So you don't have to register for the exam to get like the handbook, but if you wanted to get a test, a practice exam, then you do have to pay for that as well. But the reference book that they have during the exam is included, it's free. And yeah, just make sure that you view the most up-to-date FE exam pass rates because they do change per year. They're not always the same because, you know, people pass more often one year and less another year. So keep up to date with that.
On their website, you'll also be able to see the exam specs. So it'll break it down by topic, how many questions you can expect to see per topic. So that's a really helpful tool in studying. Maybe if there's a lot of questions on a topic you're not so confident on, maybe you want to spend some extra time there. Also, do note, I believe the exam is $175.
Yeah.
And that is due at the time of registration. So it's not when you go and take the exam, it's when you go to sign up for it. So when you schedule it, that's when you're going to have to pay that fee.
You have to pay first and then you can schedule when to take it. So you can't schedule first and then pay for it.
And I believe you're gonna have to upload your transcript just to prove that you've been in school and have received X amount of credits to be able to sit for the exam.
Also, they don't take Discover card. I found that out the hard way. This is an FYI if anyone has Discover. Yeah. So as Kim said, yeah, the FE exam, it is $125, but also the exam itself is 110 questions. It's 6 hours. I think, how long is the break? It's like 40 minutes?
Yeah, I
50
believe you
minutes?
get a second break.
25 minutes?
Oh, scheduled break. Okay, never mind. That's the fee. Totally different. Yeah, okay. So there's a non-disclosure agreement. When you first do it, it's 2 minutes. It's literally just, yeah, you're not going to cheat and you're not going to tell anybody about the exam. Then there's a tutorial just kind of showing you how everything works, how you click through questions, how you bookmark things. So that's about 8 minutes. And then the exam itself is 5 hours and 20 minutes. The first half of that is, am I mixing up? Am I mixing up?
Yeah, no, so
Yeah.
the first half and the second half are pretty much all
All
the same.
together, yeah.
The only thing is, I know a few people have been burned on this, take the break. It's not like you get extra time on the exam if you don't take the break. You don't gain that 25 minutes back. So take your time, pack yourself a snack, go out into the lobby of the testing center, you know, take a drink, take a bathroom break, have a snack. It is a long test. So
It's a long test. It's intimidating time, right? Timestamp 5 hours, 20 minutes. I don't know. I see that. I think, whoa, that's a long time. But it flies by. You know, if you get the practice book, like you mentioned, you already have, which is great. You can just practice, you study, and you know it'll fly by really quick. So don't get intimidated by that number up there.
Got another chat question.
Great.
Is an FE license required to work as a civil engineer?
So it's a prerequisite for the PE.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like when you get hired, right, and you're working as, someone could consider you working as a civil engineer, right? Right out of school, you get hired in a civil engineering position. You know, you might say to somebody, I'm working as a civil engineer, but you're not licensed. So the FE is a prerequisite to be a licensed civil engineer, which is when you take your professional engineering exam and pass it, that's when you're licensed. So it's not necessarily a prerequisite to be, you know, I don't want to say layman's term, but you know, your position could be civil engineer at XYZ company. But in order to be licensed, the FE is a prerequisite for it. Yes.
And the FE credential almost shows intent that you're wanting to take the next step towards PE. And a lot of companies, at least my company, as we post, you know, job postings, we're saying, you know, we're looking for an entry-level engineer. We're looking for someone maybe between, you know, 2 and 5 years experience or 2 to 4 years experience, EIT required, PE preferred. That is becoming more a thing, just to be honest, that's what I'm seeing at least on my end, so it would be good to share with you guys. The EIT is probably something as an engineering student you would strongly want to consider.
Everyone should take it.
Yeah.
Everyone sitting in this room. should take it.
I did just want to add really quick that you do have your scheduled break for 25 minutes. If you take an unscheduled break, you don't get that time back. So if you suddenly realize after your break, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, that's going to count against your 5 hours and 20 minutes of time. So just make sure you take that break, do what you have to do, go in with a full head and continue.
Is that break pre-scheduled, or
Yes.
you can take it whenever you
No,
want?
no, it's a set time, so the
It's like
clock
right in the
starts,
middle.
and it's right in the middle of that.
So you get 55 questions in the beginning,
Yeah,
your break, and then 55
you have to,
questions.
yeah, time out your.
But the halves
bathroom
may
breaks,
not
right?
be
Cycle.
identical in length, though. You may have some more questions in the first half than the second half. That they do it for both the PE and the FE exam, but somewhere around that 50% marker, they will give you the option to take the break.
And once you take the break, you can't go back to the
Exactly.
old
Yeah,
questions,
exactly.
right?
Once you take the break, you can go back to the previous half.
And so these ultimate questions. Was that a?
Yeah, that's the simulator.
Oh, okay. So-
Simulate.
Yeah.
Let's put- Let's see what happens. We're watching it.
It's a.
Get up there, then, you know,
Yeah.
it's-
Right.
Oh, here we go. John Richardson. Here you go.
There we go.
Must be.
So this is kind of like an interface, almost like a demo, as it says, of what your testing apparatus is going to look like when you're sitting at your testing center and taking the test. It's going to look something like that.
Very similar. So you see how it's kind of like two windows side by side. So you're gonna have your questions on one side and then your reference manual is gonna be on the other side. It is all digital, so it's searchable. I think getting very familiar with that reference manual is like imperative. You need to be able to quickly search for something and you need to know what you can search for. So you click Control F and find your equation that you're looking for right away.
Control F is your friend.
Yeah.
There's so many pages, just Control F.
So when you study, you should use that reference manual in the same interface that you're going to be doing it on the test, right? As opposed to having it printed out. Well, it makes more sense.
But it'll be the same manual, just digital form.
Right.
So whatever
Yeah,
you're,
at least
you
you
know,
get used to searching.
right, but get used to the Command F feature is a good idea, for sure.
There is a cool website, it's called PPI to Pass. It's a little bit expensive, so maybe you don't do like a 3-month bundle, because it'll run real, I think it's a change. And they actually will set up questions the same way like this. You'll have the reference manual on one side, you'll have the questions on the other, and you can just run through practice exams exactly how you're going to see it on exam day.
Students at PPI.
To pass, like an actual like 2, the number 2. PPI2pass.com.
That would be useful.
Yeah, I only did it for the week before the exam, just to take full length practice exams. Like I said, it was pretty.
Yeah, while we're on the subject of review courses, I think they're a great idea. I took one in preparation for the PE, and it was expensive, but it was well worth it. My study regimen was insane. So working full time, like you want to be serious about the test. Like I'm going into this and I want to pass the first time. We're engineers, we like numbers, we like statistics. You know, if you're looking at the statistics, you can see if you don't pass the first time, chances are you're not as likely to pass the second time. So you want to go in prepared. You know, you want to give it your best. You know, put your best foot forward in the beginning. Really give it your all the first time in. And I took a review class as well. It was through School of PE. And like I said, it was expensive, but it was game changer. I would absolutely recommend, if not School of PE, do something to prepare you. They do have sample exams. They do have content peer review, and they also have a community of people who are studying with you. So I actually found that to be really valuable when I was studying the PE. because there are people who are taking the exam and then they're coming back in the group chat and they're saying, oh, there was these type of questions, there was these type of questions. We're probably not supposed to talk about the questions on the exam, but that's almost the perk of community. You know, that's the perk you get when you are friendly and you open up and you network with some of these people that you're studying alongside of.
Oh, I did kind of want to add to the studying for resources because I know that not everyone has hundreds of dollars lying around, especially college students. So there are online resources. You can find them. I know you use different ways to find your textbooks, maybe. You can find review guides like that. Reddit was actually also a pretty good resource for me, like for r/PE or r/FE, because people do talk about the exam there. Like they will ask questions, people will list resources. So definitely check those places out if it's, if money is going to be an obstacle for you. So just kind of wanted to add that.
And YouTube also has a bunch of
YouTube,
things that you can
yeah.
look up to. If you have trouble with one particular topic, literally you can go on YouTube and find a video that gives you the whole breakdown on how to go through it. I've actually done it myself for some PE questions, so it's useful. YouTube is your friend too.
Yeah, you could find like entire playlists of people that are just teaching how to answer questions for the FE or PE. So don't be afraid to look around and see if you could find there as well. So calculator policy, these are the models that are acceptable for the 2023 exams. I'm not going to read them all because they're there. Because they're also typically your ones that you're allowed to have in your math exams anyway. I know at Stony Brook, they have specific like exam approved calculators. It's kind of the same idea. So that way everyone's kind of on the same level playing field. So for Casio, it's all the FX 115, FX 991 models. So it has to have that in the name. Hewlett Packard, the HP 33 and HP 35 models, but no others. And then Texas Instruments, all TI 30X and TI 36X models. I think I had the TI 30X Pro, something like that. But I definitely had one of the Texas Instruments ones, but they're sufficient. They're pretty good.
And this calculator policy is universal for all the NCEES exams in regards to, regardless if it's PE, you can go for nuclear if you want to. They have the same calculator policy. They want to make sure that you don't have a computer that's aiding you on the exam. So you don't want one of those fancy TI Inspire type calculators. They want you to be able to know how to do the math and how to work through the problem.
Yeah, this might go without saying, but when you're studying, use the calculator that you're going to bring to the exam. Don't use one calculator that is not exam approved and then a week before the exam buy the exam, because you want to be very comfortable with your reference material and the calculator that you're going to be using.
So I had the TI 36X Pro. That's the one I used. Yeah, definitely get familiar with the calculator and know what you're using because they are really good tools.
On the previous slide, it talked about like alternate questions. So most of your questions are going to be multiple choice, but there may be some like fill in the blank. There may be some where it requires you to click the graph to identify a certain point on the graph. And there's also ones, I had one personally where it was like click where this beam is going to fail. So you see the forces on it and you can predict where it's going to fail. So I forget exactly what they used to call all of those questions, but just be aware that it's not all necessarily multiple choice.
So if you need a reasonable accommodation, they are available for examinees who meet certain criteria. Unfortunately, I don't really know what those criteria are, but I'm sure you can find them on the NCEES website. And make sure that you have documents for that request to back you up. But they do accommodate. So yeah, so for the FE exam, this is just kind of the stuff that you can expect. Again, you will need 20 credits, be within 20 credits of graduating, and then you sign up through NCEES. The 175 exam fee is just kind of like a summary of everything we just talked about. Make sure you register early to make sure you get a seat for your desired time on your desired day. They do tend to fill up quickly, so if you are willing, like if you are wanting to take it like July 20th, you know, maybe all those seats are filled already and then you can't take it July 20th at Islandia or something. But if you're able to, you can go to different testing centers if you need to be on a specific day. And you can kind of just shop around testing centers to be on that day. And also make sure that you pick the best time for you. So you could do a weekday or a weekend. Maybe you're working over the summer and you need to take it on the weekend. So you could just kind of like, on the scheduling for the website.
Personally, I recommend people to take it on maybe some sort of break that you guys have in classes, just so it's not too stressful. You're not studying for this and then maybe you have a structural exam or something like that. So I personally took it over winter break. I thought that was super helpful. I do recommend it to people if they can. If not, maybe just after graduation. But do note that, but as we said earlier, I know that EIT is desired by most employers. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're scheduling as far as when you're going to be applying for these jobs, so that you can put it on your resume. If you're scheduled for the exam and you're applying for jobs, you can write on your resume what day you're scheduled for. But yeah, I mean, I didn't like to tell people the day I was scheduled for. I was nervous that I'd have to tell them that I was going to fail. So do that at your own discretion. But I think it is good to show intent and, you know, maybe give you an edge over someone else who doesn't have that listed.
I think you were touching on this chat question a little bit, what you were saying, but maybe I'll read it in case anyone wants to say anything else. When would be a good time to register for the exam during your time in college?
I read your mind, Jennifer. Yeah, so I would recommend, I think I registered in October and I took it in February. So do register pretty early. If you're not going to take it the winter of your senior year, I would recommend right
Summer,
after.
yeah, right after you graduate. So I took it in June, right after graduation in May, and that was great. I just took the month of June to just study graduation, all of that. It was exciting and fun, family, and then still had my lease, and I just stayed put after everyone left the campus. I just studied and would go to campus, do the practice exams. You all might probably have seen this, so same version, just with FE on the cover, right? So I just studied for the month, took it, and then I thought it was nice just to have that block of time where I was only focused on the one thing. You might not have that luxury, but if you do, definitely, like Pam said, do the winter break where you can really focus on it, or if you can't do that, do the summer, like right beginning of the summertime after your graduation.
Take it while the information is still fresh in your brain.
Yeah.
That's the rule of thumb. If you still remember your sophomore year of something, you're still within the time frame of being able to take the exam, basically.
What was the reaction after the test? Did you stay there?
I thought it was pretty fair. Yeah, I mean, I spent a fair amount of time in the weeks leading up taking practice exams. I wasn't shocked by anything. Like nothing came out of left field like, whoa, what is this? Like, yeah, everything that I saw in that exam was something that I, in some version, took in a practice one. Do you have the same kind of experience?
Yes, I would say the practice exams are super helpful. I was like, oh, I remember this question. You know, obviously the numbers are going to be different, but at least the style of questions are going to be very similar to what you see on the practice exams. I did kind of feel like I was more than adequately prepared, and I did finish early, and I was like, something's got to be wrong.
Right.
So I went back and checked things, but like it's good to have that time to go back. And during the exam, there is, as Corinne I think alluded to earlier, you can flag questions. So you can flag a question, maybe you wanted to move on, you're like, I'm going to spend too much time on this, let me circle back.
Yeah,
So you can flag it and then you can pull it up, but make sure that if you're doing it in the AM, don't leave for your break before you resolve that, because you won't be able to go back.
Yeah, recognize if you feel like you're spending too much time, recognize that feeling like, okay, time to circle this one and come back, because that, you know, are they all weighted the same? Yeah, so they're all weighted the same. So just if you recognize you're spending more time than the rest on one, circle it, come back. And I mean, these are all things you all probably know, right? You seniors or juniors in your college. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll like flag it, but I'll also put down like my best guess in case I don't have time to come back to it.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty fair. I didn't leave the FE exam and feel like, oh my God, I just completely failed that. But I mean, there's gonna be some questions that you're like, oh, I could do this in my sleep. And you're gonna see another question, you're gonna be like, I have no idea what this is trying to ask me. Because you just either didn't study it enough or you don't really know that topic. It happened to me. Don't worry. You know, you don't have to get a perfect score to pass. So don't freak out if you see a question, you don't know what to do about it. Just put your best guess and then just move on and then come back if you have time.
And Corinne, I just thought of something while we're on the topic of test strategy. A lot of the time, the questions will be long, kind of word, just scenarios of whatever's is occurring. You know, you have to solve a problem, right? I would go right to the question mark, find the question mark, and it's, you know, like, okay, what's the units they want? It's a lot of unit conversion. So, and there's a lot of other things too, right? There's the business calculations, the economics of scale, interest. That's a whole section. There's all other kinds of sections I'm not recalling. It's 5 years ago I took this thing, but a lot of them are unit conversions. And so go right to the question mark for those. Skip all the fluff. Like obviously skim it, get the gist of what it's asking, but then just see, okay, it wants me to get this in gallons per minute, and it's giving me these things, and how do I get to that unit? I found that to be a really, I was able to fly through those.
Unlike wastewater questions.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
water
Flow.
questions where you have to look for like VOD and stuff. And the units are very important. And even just overall, right? Making sure that you're using the right units, that you're converting the units properly. Because they'll put the questions in there, or answers rather, that if you screw up the units a little bit, you'll get the answer.
Be familiar with your units, but also you don't have to know all of them because they are also in the reference book at the very beginning, different units. So if you're taking a test and you start panicking, you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to get from decimeters to meters. And you're just like, you know, if you're thinking of it outside of the exam, you know how to do that. But then you're in there and you're freaking out. Just flip to the front really quick, look at the units, don't panic. It's all there. You just need to know how to take it and use it. You know everything. Yes.
I can make some, not sure if you covered it, but after passing the FE, those years of experience that have to be after the pass date,
Yes,
it can't be prior.
cannot be prior.
So
Well, if you take it after college, you can.
you
So
can.
let's
I
say,
graduated.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. So if you're working right now,
I am.
yeah. So if you're working, if you're working somewhere and your experience is considered by New York State as, you know, design experience that would go towards it. If you take your FE and you pass it and you have that experience, you could take your PE recently, which I think you did, right? Oh, no, but that was
So,
different.
yeah.
She took it in Jersey.
So
I'm all over the place. I don't count. So.
Factors
Yeah,
have been
civil-
mentioned.
Yeah.
Civil engineering technology, I'm not sure if that's the majority of people here or whoever it is. So we're technically an engineering technology degree, which means it'd be 6 years of experience after passing the FE, not 4, right?
Yes.
So it's not a bachelor degree of engineering, bachelor degree of science. So it'd be 6 years after.
But it's not 6 years after pass, it's 6 years and pass, right?
Okay,
6 years after graduation.
After graduation.
After
Clock
graduation.
starts when you graduate.
Yes.
okay, all right. And then just the other thing is, because I've also heard that, so civil engineering technology program is fairly new. I was in the, 40 years ago. So it's not actually ABET accredited yet. And I don't know if anyone else has heard of it, but yeah, so a couple of my classmates, when I talked to Sylvie, said it won't be accredited until August 2024. So just for people who are in civil engineering technology, not going to be able to take it right out of school depending on the graduate. So, but
The one thing about ABET is that from when they start the evaluation of the program, so when the school officially files the paperwork, the school may be starting to gather the paperwork, but as soon as they file that application, at most 2 academic years beforehand is grandfathered into the ABET. So if you are in the first years of review of documents that ABET looks at, you will be grandfathered in there. But if you graduate, let's say civil engineering technology has been here since 1980, and you graduate from 1980, you're not going to get the ABET grandfather. It's anyone who got into the program when they got it, or 2 years before they got it, is how you get it in there. So then once that happens in the chart, you do go over into the other chart. So if you do have some years experience in engineering technology in here, and let's say you don't hit the FE threshold, but in that process, it gets ABET, you're automatically in that accredited thing. You can just immediately go and apply to take the FE.
Yeah, so basically, I'll be grandfathered, but I just have to wait till August 2024 when it's recognized by ABET, and then I'll be able to.
Yes.
I'm just so people know, you're not going to be able to take it until August 2024. So that's for civil engineering, that is.
Yeah, to touch upon that, we were just wondering, if there's other states, like, because the laws are different in each state. Do you guys know of any states that, since we're not ABET right now, if we can take in another state?
Good question. With reciprocity, like that's in Jersey and
Yeah.
transfer to New York.
We used to have to sign, like, some states, like, I know Pennsylvania said no, Jersey said no. So, like, do you guys know any states that might let us do that?
If it's not accredited, then it's just not matter if it's nationally accredited.
No, the states have different laws, like, it
Yeah,
depends,
yeah,
we
so
just said, like,
For example, New Jersey, you could take your PE without the additional 4 years of experience. So like certain states are a little bit different. There's none that I know specifically with the
I had briefed with you this idea. It's a little oddball, and so NCEES does do credentials evaluations. For instance, if you earned your degree abroad, that even if it was an engineering program, it wouldn't be ABET accredited. So you'd have to have a way for NCEES to say, yeah, your degree counts as something that you can take the exam with. So that would also count for programs in the US that are not accredited. You could have them evaluated. It looks like it's a process that takes a little bit of time. Of course, the downside is that there's a $350 fee for them to evaluate it. It is, if you're in a real rush to take it, I understand the rush. Like they said, they've advised you to take it as close to when you graduate as possible. So the information is fresh in there.
I also got
If
to
you-
tell my employer now, because I thought it was going to be right after the graduation.
Yeah.
So now I have to tell, and I have to tell them it's not.
So there is the possibility, I don't know if it's a possibility that some employers would want to put up for some of that fee for the credential evaluation, so you could take it earlier. So that is a possibility. It looks like the idea is they have a standard list of courses that would be taken in an engineering program. If you send them your transcript and the lists match up, they'll give you permission to take an exam after this evaluation and this fee. So that could be another possibility. It's,
and it's worth asking your employer if they do.
So, yeah,
I know that for the PE, you can take it in another state before the experience in New Jersey, North Carolina, and Texas. Those are the three. I don't know about the FE, but for Texas and North Carolina, it might be like worth looking into. I don't.
Texas.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
I think their laws are a little like very lenient.
That's right.
So I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, definitely look into those two.
I think in general, the FE requirements are pretty consistent from state to state.
It's the same test.
It's the same
Depending
test,
on which
same
disciplines,
everything.
right? So,
Yeah, it's pretty consistent from state to state for the FE requirements. When you go up to the PE level, that's where you get more of this variability, where some states let's decouple it, some states only have 1 year, 2 year, 3 year experience.
That makes sense. It's, I guess, since we're graduating, maybe I want to wait like 2 years.
That makes sense.
It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I'm actually one of the ones up here that managed to take the FE way after school
Oh,
ended.
speak up.
Yeah, because I had a fun experience with getting misinformation from a couple of people in the state, a couple of misinformation from my faculty at Stony Brook, because it was kind of fresh for everyone. And I found out after dealing with 3.5 months of trying to because the state, even with the FE, they actually do give written approval for you to take the FE. They are very strict about everything. So it was late August
while I was already working, I'm already 4 months out of school. I was starting to study towards beginning of August, and at that point, all the school information left and all the stuff I was doing for work related was retained. So it was a lot more difficult for me to take the FE than normal for any other test. But once I got the approval from the state, they did actually tell me, oh, because you got a BE, you could have just avoided having to apply the whole entire time. You could have just taken it. And I'm like, well, thank you for that. But at least that was still, in that regard, that work experience actually got accredited towards my PE, work experience going towards the PE. So there's also some situations where you can actually fluff the numbers on your work experience for the PE. And you'll, when we get to the PE section, you'll see kind of how you kind of have to fluff it in a way.
And I think,
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, please.
okay, I think that in terms of ABET accreditation, Kevin would probably be the best person to ask because he was part of Stony Brook's first class of civil engineering, that their first graduate, second. Listen, I'm trying to give you more credit. You want to give back,
I worked
that's
with the
fine.
first class a lot, so.
So Kevin actually had to go through the whole process of, okay, when I had my degree and took my classes, I wasn't accredited. Now it is, like, what do I do about it? So he would be the best.
Yeah, I
person to
literally
talk to.
probably spoke to every single person in that office up in Albany at this point.
We were the first accredited class, right? Graduating.
First accredited.
So.
I was the second grandfather, okay?
And then deal with the name of it.
There is another interesting strategy material-wise that you can consider if you're willing to wait, and that is that most states will allow you, once you have the PE experience requirement, to take the FE and then take the PE directly after. There is some overlap in the material for the two exams, not 100%, but I would say, maybe 50-50. So if you're studying for both at the same time, at least you have that material that you can use on studying for both of those at the same time. Maybe that helps a little bit instead of trying to, wait 2 years, study it, then wait another 2 years and study again. It's a possibility. I know that part of the thing, though, is not just the material thing, but there are a lot of jobs that will want you to get that credential as soon as possible. But that's just a suggestion from the material standpoint.
So a lot of companies would most likely help you out in this.
They want
Push forward a little bit for a lot of it. So it's not really a problem for people who are just joining, even at the really year, it's not really that much of a problem. So, recognition. So you graduate to do this. That's really good about the experience after you graduate. So I thought I would have to take the FE to after and then wait 6 years after. But that's not the case.
No, you just have to, whenever you hit the threshold or it goes from non-accredited to accredited, you would immediately be able to take the FE. And if you are at that 2-year work experience and it becomes accredited, well, you already got now 2 years of work experience towards your PE. So the chart in its own way, even though it's confusing and it looks very horrendous to look at, it can actually benefit you in a lot of ways depending on where you fall in the chart. And if you jump over that accreditation line, it can actually help you.
But it's not ever experience, so they accept.
Yeah, exactly, because this is part of the whole official application process for the PE in regards to the experience. They do look for a lot, and they do nickel and dime and penny you on every little thing you write on experience. So that's another.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but all of your experience has to be signed off by.
Yes.
So make sure that you have a close working relationship with someone, at your firm or wherever you end up, that is a PE that is willing to sign off on your experience. Also, do know if you're going to be changing jobs, keep in good contact with that
Yes.
first job because they're still going to have to sign off on that.
Leave on bad terms.
Yeah.
Or get them to sign it.
Yeah.
Get them to sign it first, then leave on bad terms. If you're gonna do that, but.
Yeah, so that could be a question when you're interviewing, right? You want to ask the employer that you're you're interviewing with, am I going to be working under a PE? I want to get my PE. One, that shows that you're interested in getting it, and two, you want to know that information like as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I'd recommend keeping a log too of the projects that you're working on and your involvement. It's kind of hard to recall back what you've done the past 4 or 6 years. But keep a log as you're going and definitely make a good relationship with the PE. They've gone through the approval process, especially someone who's done it more recently, like the people up here. They know exactly what type of wording the board is going to be looking for. A lot of it is like buzzwords, I'm sure, that they're looking for, and what not to include. So I know they're big on design experience. I think it was Rafik who got one in construction management.
Yeah, you work for a contractor.
Yeah, so that's also an option. Make sure that you hook up with someone who's familiar with that route, on how to get that experience.
The good thing about the experience is that because the way how New York is, you get a professional engineering license. It's not subdivided by what type of civil engineering you're going for. Because of that, any engineering experience you get can be put towards the license. Or if you're still in the non-accredited phase, towards the FE. So anything that's engineering work related that you had a PE sign off on, whether your immediate supervisor is not a PE, but their supervisor is, and their supervisor is willing to sign off, as long as it's an prevalent engineering experience of any, it could be environmental, geotech, construction for that matter, any of that can be applied. So it's not like, oh, I'm going for structural, I have to do specifically X amount of years of structural. No, if I have to do 2 months worth of hydraulic calculations for culverts or 6 months of dealing with environmental calculations for stuff, that would still count towards your experience.
Does that all boil back down to the fact that you're working under somebody with a
Yes.
PE license, right? So that's if you have that mentor, that supervisor, or just employer who has their own stamp and PE license, then you working under them is.
Can
That's it.
a PE and electrical sign off for civil?
Not
Yes.
again.
Yeah, because your
Oh, yeah.
PE is a license. You're
Yeah,
not, you're
that's true.
taking it by the exam, but once you're licensed, you're licensed. Now, it's up to the individual to know what they can and they can't practice with, right? If you've never done structural engineering your entire life and you have a PE, you could technically stamp that, but ethically you can't. Technically you could, no one's gonna ask you, what did you take your test in? It's not attached to your license, but ethically you can. That's part of being a licensed engineer is also the code of ethics, right? So you need to practice within your area of expertise. But yes, an electrical engineer could
Yeah.
endorse you.
And technically, there is wording in the education law for New York and other states that when you have the license, you have to work within your field of competency. So maybe you might know how to do a basic circuit for a house to rewire a circuit breaker. If you're comfortable with doing that or whatnot, then you are technically competent to do that. But if you're trying to design a power plant and you deal with geotechnical engineering, that's not within your scope of practice. You can't do that even legally in regards to a lot of states in that regard. So it's not just ethically, there is legal repercussions for that, which could go down towards license revocation.
We didn't get to the PE part yet.
Yeah. Oh, we have your best.
You started touching.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what is it, about 48 hours or less than a week until you get your results?
I think it's the Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's
they
gonna
do it
be-
weird. Yeah.
It's gonna be the Wednesday after you take your exam that you'll see your results. It'll be on the NCS website.
Yes.
If you're like me, you'll probably stay up all night and you'll hit like refresh. Don't recommend. But yes, very exciting. And if you don't pass, they will give you a diagnostic report. So it'll say exactly what areas you know, excelled in versus maybe you got a lot of questions wrong in a certain category.
And you can take it up to 3 times in a year. So if you fail it, theoretically, if you fail it and you decide, you know what, I'm going to take this again next week, you could do it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Maybe take a breather, but you could take it again the week after you
They
fail.
actually did implement something.
Did
They block you from that quarter. So
Interesting.
the next quarter, you could take the exam again. But you still can't take it more than 3 times a year.
Okay, never mind. Ignore what I just said. That was okay.
It just says pass, right?
Yeah, it just says
If
pass.
you pass, it just says pass.
You
If
don't know
you
if you passed by a
fail,
lot or if there's-
exactly.
Yeah, as
If you
long as it's
fail,
a
you'll know.
pass.
Yes, as long as it's a pass.
At that
Exactly.
point, you're just
You
so
can-
happy you passed, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Like, wow, that
exactly.
question I didn't answer. I can't believe I got it right. Just move
I
on.
perfected that exam.
Exactly.
This is for like one down the road. So after after you get work experience, and then how many kinds of civil PE? So there's structural, there's water. So right now I have a job with water resources and engineering. So like I kind of want to get an idea of when is it practical for someone to really think about, okay, which PE am I going through? And when is it kind of not? Is that too late after to really think of a change? Or that's what I'm kind of concerned about.
I mean, you could decide whatever you want, to be honest, because again, it's like you could work in water resources and you could take the transportation. Honestly, I would look at the pass rates.
Yeah, be educated, be informed, right? We like numbers, we like data. You want to take the exam in, you know, the field that you're going to be studying in, but you also want to be educated to know, okay, well, with the amount of people that take the exams, the highest pass rate is construction. Construction PE exam has the highest pass rate, or transportation, whatever that pass rate is. So just be aware of, you know, that is what I would say.
So is there no like, I guess there's no requirement for you to take a certain PE?
No, as long as it's a civil
Yeah.
exam.
Like,
That's basically what it is. For me personally, because I deal with a lot of bridge engineering, a lot of structural engineering, even though the structural exam is more towards buildings versus what I do, I wanted to do something that is more competent to my field and what I have done. So I purposely took the hardest exam you can take of civil.
Would the company also like have requirements or if you can take it or not?
No.
I've never
like what they
heard
touched
that
on
before.
earlier, your stamp will say professional engineer and you will have PE civil. You don't have to specify what that was. So,
Some states do separate, like California, there's a separate civil engineer and a mechanical engineer, but in New York, it's all just professional engineer. And I don't think any state will say like, you're a civil
Yeah, no.
transportation engineer. It's all just.
I'll just PE.
When you submit your application, you don't need to pay. It's not until you register for the exam. So,
Yeah.
And if I may chime in, I've known of people who shop around.
yeah.
They'll try one, they're like, oh, I can't pass it.
I know a couple of people that I
And they'll
worked
just
with
keep
that
going
took
until
a
they
discipline
find
that
it.
wasn't theirs and they still passed it, and they still practiced their discipline that they do, just so that they could get the license and continue forward with what they need to do in their career, because they're not great at test taking. Which is actually another thing you could possibly factor in. If you're not a great test taker, you want to take maybe an easier subsect of the civil exams, then maybe you might want to look into taking one of the easier ones if it has this passing rate. Again, it's all up to you what you feel comfortable with doing at the end of the day.
So the one thing with the pass rates that I will say, I think construction actually usually has the lowest
Yes,
passing rate.
because people think it's easy, so they take
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I'm so serious.
Yeah.
People think it's easy, so they take it, and then they find out, wow, I know nothing about construction. Okay, great.
So I'm not convinced that is it the hardest or is it that the people that are taking it are studying a lot because they think it's the easiest? I haven't.
I think it's a
considered
little.
it.
Just a chat question. Is it recommended to buy FE civil practice books like from PPI?
I personally use them along with the online tool, and I am someone that likes tangible things, so I found it very useful. Michael R. Lindbergh, I could write it up on the board. He's got some good books. He's got a general FE book, which will have some topics that aren't necessarily on your exam, so skip over those. There is a civil specific FE book. It doesn't necessarily have practice questions in it, but it's good for reviewing the material. They have sample questions, so they're all solved out for you. But the other general one has diagnostic exams, where you can kind of go flip to the front of the chapter, take the exam, say, okay, I did really good on this, skip this chapter. And then they also have practice exams. So I really like that one. Again, it doesn't touch into some of the more specialized civil stuff like transportation or anything like that, as opposed to the civil specific.
How long did you study for?
I was 3 months.
Funny question. Some people are kind of iffy on this one, but just on the case of like, okay, going to a different state to take your PE because it's quicker, but then would there be some kind of problems going to New York State and be approved? You know, and experience in that, or just don't recommend?
There are stipulations in regards to how each state's Department of Education handles it. Each state's Department of Ed is responsible for licensing for these types of professions. So some of them have different requirements. With New York, if you take it in New Jersey and you pass it and you get licensed in New Jersey, but you don't meet the work experience you have in New York, they won't accept and issue your PE until you've met the requirement, and you still have to submit the paperwork. You can't get away without submitting the paperwork. You actually do have to submit an additional form saying you're practicing under a different license, which is important. Any state you go to, if you have a license in another state, fill out the form that says that you're practicing under a different state's license, because you can possibly be jailed for malpractice and you can potentially lose your license in both states, the home state and the state you're going to. So it's always important, if you're going to be moving to another state, you have a license, fill out that state's form of practicing under a different license. As long as it's still active, always do that. And that's one of the things with New York. You have to fill out that form. You have to then still fill out your work experience forms. You still have to fill out the application for it, even though you already have a license in another state. You still have to pay the $200-something fee for the licensing application. You still have to go through the whole process. You just have more paperwork to do. But that doesn't exactly stop you from practicing.
Would you, I guess the benefit of it is to kind of, for me at least, would be to at least get the test done and it's out of the way. But is that worth it? And is there going to be other problems? Or would you just recommend stick it in New York and there's nothing to go wrong? Or is it, as long as you do everything right?
I mean, I took my PE for a New Jersey board because someone I know actually recommended that I do that just so I would get it out of the way. And as far as I know, I just have to fill out a couple extra forms because I don't have a license in New Jersey. I'm waiting to get my experience so I can apply for the New York license. But the NCEES is a national exam. So it's the same for all of the states, so that doesn't change. So I actually have to go through NCEES and fill out a couple forms to have them transfer it to New York, like under the New York board. And then I have to fill out an extra form, like Kevin said, when I do my application for my PE license.
And that's actually, oh, sorry.
No, I guess as long as you do it right.
Yeah.
As long as you do it right.
Also, a fun little thing too that is starting to become a lot common with all 50 states and territories with licensing. You can put your work experience that is going towards your PE on NCEES, and you just note on the application, there's usually a spot on the application on any state that says, oh, you could request my work experience from NCEES. That way you could actually not have to worry about submitting 12 or however many forms you need to fill out. If it's on the portal, they'll just send it over straight to the state board. So you could actually bypass a whole boatload of paperwork if you have it on the NCEES portal and already there.
Include the sign-offs,
Yes.
the supervisor?
Yes, they have, there is this, I forget the protocol that they have on it, but whoever is the licensed engineer, I think you put in their contact information, they get the notification, they then have to go in and verify that. And then once that's verified, it's verified in the online portal.
Yeah, I'm going through multi-state licensure right now, but I wasn't in the boat that you guys are in. I had everything, lined up and already done. I didn't have to worry about ABET accreditation or when I could take the exam. So I got my PE in New York And to open up some doors for myself and for my firm, I'm thinking about, okay, where do I want my PE? I want New York, I want Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Georgia. Okay, well, if NC's right now is doing great because they made this thing where you can, as Kevin said, you update your experience to like one platform. And for me, it was kind of unfortunate because I did it the old school way back when I took the PE. I did everything by paper. But now that I'm going through the multi-state process, multi-state licensure process, it's like you upload everything to their platform. You fill out, okay, I had 4 years under, or 2 years under this professional, 2 years under this professional, this was my work scope. And then you submit, and it like allows them the ability to review it and approve it, and it sticks to your NC's record. And so now when I want to apply for multi-state, there's like a whole like, your transcript is in there, there's a whole bunch of things, but now I have the option to say, hey, I want multi-state, and it's literally a drop down. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Georgia, submit, and you just pay a fee to transmit to all of them.
When you submit, do they require an exam? Like, how do they?
So New York is actually one of the most, well, besides California and
Any state on the West
Florida.
Coast.
Florida is pretty strict too, but New York is one of the more strict states. And what that means is that once you have your license in New York, that's a good sign. If there's an extra test, I think you got to take for California and Florida with wind loading and seismic and earthquake.
It's called the structural engineering
Seismic
exam.
and survey.
Is that to get your P or to get your SC?
No, and for
Oh.
just little side note, when it comes to any states on the West Coast, Florida, and then in the Midwest, because of the severe weather loading or natural disaster loading, there is a test above PE called structural engineer, and that is only allowed to be taken, even if you want to take it just because you cannot physically take that exam without having passed the PE. And in some of these states, in order to practice structural engineering, you need to actually have that exam as a pass. And that is a 16-hour exam over the course of 2 days, from 8 to 5 on both days, Friday and Saturday. So this is a little fun fact there. There are some states that do sometimes make you go.
I can see the
One thing at a
fear.
time. I'm scared just thinking
Yeah,
about
I'm
that.
scared. I'm ignoring that.
Just
I'm
to
sorry.
circle back to Kevin's point, I think you were saying New York has a lot of reciprocity with other states.
Yeah,
Because it's such a difficult exam of all the 50 states, if you get your license in New York State, then you can then apply for that reciprocity, right? And get your license in other ones.
Your comedy in New York is
Yes.
easier than, I don't really know what Nebraska's rules are, but New York, like I was saying, is one of the more strict. So once you get into New York,
So that's the technical term, right? Is that reciprocity?
Yeah.
between
they
states?
call it comedy.
Yeah.
NC's calls it comedy, but yeah, reciprocity comedy. Not like funny, haha, like COMITY.
But yeah, I know that the PE is probably a very far away experience for most of you. So what I would say is take it in something that you enjoy, because I hope that you enjoy what you're doing, or at least some parts of it. Like, no offense to anyone who's structural, I really hate structural, so I would
I don't
not
blame
take
you.
it. I would not take it in structures. But for your PE, that is an exam that you're going to be sitting for 8 hours for. So I hope you take it in something you enjoy doing questions on, because then it's going to be miserable. So pass rates are good to look at, but if you take it in transportation and you hate transportation, that's going to be a very long 8 hours.
Moving along, we got a nice slide up here. I guess I want to say too, the PE exam is tough. Like, I left the FE exam feeling like, okay, I did good. I left the PE exam, and I know you guys aren't quite there yet, but I left the PE exam like chicken. I felt sick. I felt like, holy cow, I just spent so much time preparing, and it was worth, I failed. That's it, it's done. And then a few days later, I got the pass results. So like, just put in the effort. I left the exam feeling really defeated, but I also put in a lot of work. So I guess it paid off. Anyway, like I was saying before, we're engineers, we like numbers, we like data. So this graph kind of gives us a nice little picture, a nice summary. So on the right side of that graph, we have pass rates and percentages. That red line on the top is actually is the pass rate, yeah. And that correlates to the numbers on the right side. On the left side,
The number is equal.
Yeah, you guys can read it better than I can. So, as we're looking at this, what is it, do you guys notice anything that pops out at you when you're looking at this diagram, this chart?
Give it a couple of years and question.
Yeah, so like in the years of experience range, like, okay, so if I have 3 years experience, 4 years, 10 years, at what range of experience am I most likely to pass the PE based on this chart? 4. And like, that's a pretty important statistic. Like, I wanted to make sure that we included this. What this tells us is that the PE exam is strictly academic. That's what this is telling us. So as you are a developed engineer and as you are experiencing more in your career, you develop this sense of like professional judgment, and you are exposed to all these different things, and you're like, okay, that is important, that doesn't matter, and your brain kind of just develops in this way as an engineer. The PE exam is strictly an academic test. They need to make sure that everyone across the board is able to get the same exact answer, and they are doing that by allowing people to calculate with actual formulas and using your knowledge to apply like very specific numbers. So at the 4-year mark, that's like, hey, you've got the perfect amount of experience and academic, I guess, background to really be, nailing this exam. So as you are preparing, right now for your PIT, and as you're thinking about the PE for the future, just keep in mind, like, yeah, I definitely want to sit for the PE around the 4 to 5 year mark. I think that's the sweet spot.
That's interesting. And I like how, once you get to 11 plus, it just kind of goes back up again.
Which is it's crazy to think about, because you think about all the really intelligent people in your career, in your engineering career, and you're like, if you were to sit for the PE right now, would you pass? I don't know. Less likely, it seems. But there's a reason for that, and it's because they're testing strictly academically. Like when you're taking the test, they need to make sure that everyone can get the same exact answer. They don't want any sort of nonconformity or ambiguity in the questions or the responses. It needs to be measurable, quantifiable, and exact.
Which often in practice,
Yeah.
that's not really
Yes.
common.
What's the percentage that you have to get at the school on the test to pass? Or is it?
I remember back in the day, there used to be a certain percentage, but that was.
Right, it's about 70, but you won't.
But
No,
the-
it's
it's
not.
now-
It changes from test to
Yeah,
test.
it's
not a
about,
set
but
number,
it's.
but it's about 70 to
Yeah,
75.
because I think they take they look at everybody, and then they have a certain percent that they will
It's
pass. and a
almost
certain percent they
all
won't.
entirely graded by a computer at this point that does all this. They see how many test takers did not do well in a particular question. If that's the case, they just throw that one out the
Yeah.
window. So you're actually kind of being tested amongst your peers
Yeah,
in that time of who took that test.
it's by that test that everyone
It's
took.
more comparative.
Yeah.
So like, they say it's about 70, but it could go to like 60, it could go to 80, so don't be like, well, I got, 40, questions right out of this, then I passed. Like, it depends on how good the other people were that were taking it. But not to scare you, because you're gonna do great, but just so you know, it's not a set number.
So up on the screen, we have a diagnostic report. So if you fail, this is what you're going to receive. You can see kind of how you kind of marked up for each of these topics. Let's just take, was it transportation engineering? So there was 9 questions on that, and you got a 4.5. So maybe you want to spend like some extra time really honing in on some of that material. As opposed to water resources, there's 10 questions, you got a 9.6. All right, you're pretty confident, maybe brush up again before the exam, but that's not your main area of focus that you need to improve. So I think this is a great tool.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that each question, some of them are weighted differently, right? Like they're not all just 1 point, some are like 2 points towards that sort of.
On the PE, they're all weighted the same. to my
I thought
knowledge.
they were-
PE is all the same. FE, I'm not entirely sure.
It says in that book, so it doesn't really, it says it's really 9 practice. It isn't the practice exam, just the pass.
Yeah, that's the P one. You don't have that.
I think there are certain,
So the FE one, it's like-
I forget if it's this one or some other test, but there are certain like sample questions or whatever that they put in that don't count. So of the, whatever it is, 110 questions, 10 questions may be just
Yeah.
like sample questions or pilot questions that don't count for anybody. And then the rest of the 100 are weighted equally, but the spec, like the specifications is roughly how many questions are gonna be on the test, not what point values they get.
And
That's
I'm
my
not sure if this is the case or not, but the questions I think are adaptive. They don't ask everybody the same questions in the same order. They'll look at the way you answer the question, the difficulty of it, and then choose another question,
Yeah.
next question from a pool on the basis of how you answer that, and then they'll go through that entire thing.
Yeah, this is
Especially
why
It
all
is
the
so
digital-
anti-cheating, like, don't even try. Like,
Especially some of
So
like.
Skynet
the
took over.
alternate-
even if you were thinking about it, it's just not gonna happen. It's not a thing that will happen, so don't even.
And although a small percentage, those alternate questions where it's not multiple choice, those are definitely gonna be different. So, you know, not only is it gonna be maybe a different type, totally different question, and a different answer. Very, very different. Those might be interview, but I believe they're all pretty much carry the same way.
And I wanted to go back to the pilot questions because there are some questions that they will not count whether you answer them correctly or incorrectly. They will count for future exams, whether it was a good question or a bad question. So if you got a question like that, or like a question that you're like, I have no idea what this is asking, a good thing that I did was I kind of was like, all right, that's a pilot question, doesn't count, just, you know, threw it out in my head so you don't get frazzled by it. So don't let it shake you if you don't get a question. It's okay.
We could go back one. So this is under the PE section, but really it's to help you in the EIT and the FE as well. These are just like general exam tips and tricks when you're studying this exam. I don't know if that's one real quick if you want to.
Yeah, you got it right.
I do. So the best tool for me was like repeat exposure, like expose yourself to the type of questions that are going to be asked and just put them in front of you again and again and again, almost like annoyingly so, like where you can answer the question in your head. I have to do this, 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 this. I have to use this formula, this formula, and it's going to take you a lot of time to get there. But on test day, when you have like, set yourself time, you set aside time for yourself to like simulate that testing scenario. I'm going to set aside 8 hours for myself on a Saturday who wants to do that, but that's what it takes to like excel and set yourself apart, really like think about what you want to, achieve in your career and be committed to it. And I think simulating the exam conditions over and over again, being really familiar with the reference material, like when I was studying for the PE, when I first started, it was before they transitioned to the computer-based testing. So I don't know if you guys all heard all the rumors, and I think, Matt, when you took the exam, were you able to bring reference materials? with
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
was.
there used to be like people bringing in suitcases of like
Yeah.
textbooks and reference materials into the exams. Well, when I started studying, I was like making all these nice little colorful tabs in my, in all my books, like, okay, this is sanitary, this is land development, this is highway, and everything had a color. And as I was studying, they changed to computer-based testing, and I said, crap. And it really changed the way I was preparing. So, I had to transition and pivot a little bit because I now had to really learn how to take advantage of the digital reference manual. So when you're preparing for the exam, you have one digital full, reference manual. You can do a nice control F. We're all kind of techie. We know how to do control F and take advantage of our time and our research options. But come exam day, at least on the PE, it's not one assembled document. It's not like I could do a control F and the whole, document will be searched for this one item. You need to know the way your reference material is structured. You need to know the chapters that exist and what is in each chapter, and you can navigate to the chapter, and then you can do a control F in like each sub chapter and division, but like you can't just do a control F for the whole reference book. So all that being said, just prepare yourself and really, at least what I found helpful for me is like repeat exposure to exams, like get your hands on practice exams. Maybe you and your friends buy a bunch of different ones and you split them, I don't know. All the different study platforms and like School of PE and PPI to Pass, they all have their versions of exam prep. They have like flashcards you could use to prepare yourself with like, these are the things you want to know. These are the formulas you want to know, like right offhand. If you're taking transportation, what's the average walking speed of a pedestrian crossing the street? What's the conversion of, vertical feet of water to PSI. Like these are the things like as you're taking the test, that can save you time. And time management is key when you're taking the test. On the PE, you know, you have the morning section and the afternoon. And when I took my PE, I don't know about you, they didn't split. It wasn't like 40 questions in the
It was
morning.
44 to 36.
It was like,
That
yeah,
was
it was
mine.
a different split. And no one was keeping track of time for you to say, hey, halfway through, like you have to be aware of what's happening. And if you're at question 50 and you only got like 3 hours left or 2 hours left, you know, that's a problem. Like it's up to you to really hone in on your, you know, how you answer the questions, how you read the questions, how you approach flagging problem questions, you know, going back to the ones that are giving you the most problems. I think that's what helped me succeed in my exam. And knowing how to use the approved calculators, we kind of touched on that. I'm a whiz with the TI-83, you know, I can, you know, do crazy stuff on that, but like these calculators that they make you use on the test, I never used that before. Every day at work when I'm doing my calculations, I use my TI-83 or TI-86,
Oh, you're
whatever it
fancy.
is.
I use those exact exam calculators every day for
Oh, yeah,
work,
no.
so I'm completely familiar with it.
I don't use these things, but like spending the time to get to know, some of these calculators have like little, you know, cheat codes. I wouldn't even call them cheat codes, but they have shortcuts that will help you, like, especially with time value money as you get into the economics portion of the exam, you know, those can save you some time.
For the basic math.
Yeah.
Integrals.
2 plus 2.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
the integrals, like some of them will solve it for you, some of them will do matrices for you. Like if you need to do like the determinant, like I don't know how to do determinant of a matrices like off the top of my head in like 2 minutes flat. So having calculators that just do it for you it will save you so much time.
I know the TI-30X does not do the statistics. I know the TI-36X, they do the statistics. So I will go to the calculator that does more for me too.
TI-36X Pro is a really good calculator. That is the one I use, and I bought that in Stony Brook. So I used it for all my Stony Brook exams, and then I just used it on the FE.
Did you guys bring an extra calculator?
Yes.
I actually did it for my FE,
I
for
have
my
full
PE, I
versions.
just winged it.
You wigged it,
I
wow.
winged it I was like, you know what, I
Roll
am
the
so
dice.
tired. I was like, I don't care.
I brought an extra.
I had the lower end calculator and the higher end, and I used the higher end, and God help me if that one died, I would have went to the lower end, but I still know how to use both of them to take the test.
Took my TI-36X and I was like, listen, we made it through college together, we're gonna do this. And I was like, full send.
Did you change the batteries or?
Yes.
Oh,
I was just like, we're going. I was like, listen, either we're
She's a
gonna
brave
make it,
soul.
either we're gonna make it or we're not gonna make it. I'm gonna find out today. So
I mean, at least bring an extra battery.
yeah, you should do that. Don't be like, definitely bring an extra calculator.
Another thing that we didn't touch on is you don't get like a pen and paper to write your math down. It's actually like a little dry erase packet.
Yeah.
So once you're studying, maybe like get a dry erase board or something just to get used to. It's like a piece of paper, like
It's like
printed
this.
paper.
It's like this big, and it's like
It's like
4
a-
sheets, double-sided of laminated paper, basically. Use a
You can
Sharpie
ask for
on it.
more though.
Yeah, you
if
can always
run
ask for
out,
more.
Ask for more, and especially if you flag a question, you start doing the work for it, but maybe you run out of space and you start erasing things. Make sure you say that. I really didn't like the whole dry erase thing, but I did find that practicing with it was helpful, so I didn't start smudging things all over the place.
Totally to go off of Pam, like number your questions when you're doing the work for them, because I did not, and when I went back to check my work and I just saw like 36 times 5, and then over here it's like numbers like in dollar signs, and I was like, what did I do? Like, why did I do this? Like, you're not gonna remember what you did
Also,
an hour ago.
also take lines and draw lines
Yes.
where your question is being written on your scrap booklet, basically, so that if the calculation kind of starts working its way around for whatever reason, make sure you know where the zone of that is, because that will save you a lot of time that may be wasted trying to find what you did on previous
That goes
questions.
for the FE too.
And specifically for the FE, you might have something very similar. And you say, oh, okay, I just used that equation, but I manipulated it this way, now I need to manipulate it this way. So it helps to just keep that stuff organized.
Especially for economics, you will find things that just have to be flipped one way or another just to get to there. Be organized.
Also, when you take the exam, if there's a question that is bothering you,
but you kind of have a gut feeling of what is automatically wrong, use your best engineering judgment on wheeling out what is absolute trash and just know which ones are probably right. Flag the question, come back to it later. So at least then you're not trying to figure out if all 4 are right. You could just stick and ponder on 2 or 3 even for that matter, if that's the case. It's useful for both PE and FE. Just use your engineering judgment.
What's for your chat question?
So nice. Oh, okay. I went to construction group in the 6th form stuff. Oh, okay. Sure. All right, I have to remember that. All right, good night. Said at the end of this. So, all right, noted.
But I think we ran through most of our stuff. If you guys wanna open it up to questions, any questions from the chat?
There's nothing else in the chat. So there's no requirements for you guys.
It's just for you guys, making sure you have that ABET accreditation. So I guess you guys are gonna have to wait for that. With, yes.
I overheard, I don't know if it's, don't hold me on this. If you go for a dual degree, but I don't know if that's true. You'll have, if it's like architecture or construction management, those are already ABET accredited. The reason why is because they've been in the school for so long. It's just because we're new, that's why. The civil engineering team is like if I say construction management, I would say that's not. So the thing about and civil engineering is we're doing civil engineering. I think it's construction. I think I don't know if you have to architecture, they have a different test. You know, the architecture test is a good question. Yeah. Just double check. So that might be. Or just look into it if it's worth it for, I don't know, more time or college for, so that would also be, like when you graduate, is it gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna graduate, like, great, so it's predatory. It's not
So I know at an ABET accredited university, you have to be within 20 credits of graduation, which is why they make you submit that transcript. So if it is the case that you're ABET accredited and we can sit for the FE civil, you can take it with that. But I would just look up on that. I'm sure the NCES website has good information on that. And if not, you can probably contact someone through NCES.
Just I would double check on that too. So I think I've read something, I'm not sure how accurate it is, that since it's a technology, you might be waiting until after graduation to. I know like bachelor and graduate to the final year.
Yeah, yes. This is a technology that is after graduation.
Well, we certainly threw a lot of information at you guys. We understand it was a lot. But really, we want you guys to succeed. We want you to be really great engineers, and we're here to help you achieve that. And however, we can help you do that. So if you have questions, I mean, I'm no expert in all of the ABET, the ABET rounds of things that you guys are dealing with here. But I'm sure between all of us that we can figure out, a way to help you out with some of the questions you're having. And yeah, we just want you guys to succeed. So if you have questions that you feel like weren't answered today, feel free to reach out to us. And if you have like interview questions or resume questions, we're here to help with that stuff too. So, yeah.
Or most seniors, everyone in the room, or juniors, sophomores.
Mostly junior stuff.
And so it's 2024, the August of 2024.
Yeah, so it's kind of
It's a unique transition period for you all with that.
yeah, it's just kind of landed options. Like you said, I don't know that it requires a dual just be, okay, I'd rather just wait and do the degree, or, you know.
If you're not graduating until the
Yeah.
fall or the next spring,
Yeah.
it's probably not worth,
Yeah. that's
you
what
know,
I-
unless you want 2 degrees, there's nothing wrong with having 2 degrees. That's a great benefit. If you want to pay the extra money and get the 2nd degree, then you, as soon as you get that degree that's in one of the 2 ABET accredited programs that we have, the architecture, the construction management, certainly welcome to. But again, if you're graduating that close to when we're going to be accredited, you probably may not find that worthwhile. Yeah.
So about the ABET credit, so let's say this is your last semester. Next year, you'll get the ABET accredited.
Again, we're set to be approved. We're on track to be approved August 2024. We're gonna have a visit in the fall from ABET, and then there's some more paperwork and whatnot.
So as long as you were in school 2 years before they get. ABET.
Everybody who was graduated by then, before then, will be
Yeah.
eligible.
It
for
doesn't
that
matter, you don't have to have a
accreditation.
certain amount of credits while it's, okay.
As long as your degree says BS, Civil Engineering Technology, Farmingdale State College, that degree will be ABET accredited. You will be eligible to do that.
Yeah, that's the author of the books that I was talking about before. He has the general FE exam review material and then the civil specific.
He's been around long enough that I bought his books when I.
He's been along for a while.
They're very credible. They do have like satisfaction guarantees too. I don't know anyone who's gone through it, but if you fail, you should go in.
All right, I got a question for the PE. Everyone I spoke to with the PE license, you know, it's the older generation, so they took it with all the reference material they had to bring in. You said it's all on the computer. Do you have to buy those reference materials? It's already populated.
It's when you show up to the testing center on test day, everything's already programmed.
You don't have to bring anything in?
Correct. You're actually not allowed to
You're
bring.
not allowed to bring anything in,
You are
but
not allowed
your
to bring it.
calculator and yourself.
If you want access to that material ahead of time to study with, they don't give it to you. You have to have it yourself somehow. In your office, you have to buy it yourself.
Yeah, so NCs will give you the general reference, the first part of your exam for the, what is that, the depth? Breadth.
The breadth.
They call it breadth and depth now. So they'll give you the reference material for
The breadth.
breadth. But for the depth, where you focus on your concentration, so if you're taking the test in transportation, all of the transportation reference materials, the highway capacity manuals, AASHTO, you know, you have to have all of them. So, you know, if your firm doesn't have a copy of those for you,
They'll provide you a list of what they are, but you still have to acquire it. But
They'll have
also, they are about to, I think they're about to revise the editions.
Yeah.
Because I think we're at the cusp of them revising to the latest edition. It's like every 4 years or so, we go to the latest edition. I think I'm at the tail end of the current one. So I don't know what they're gonna end up doing next year when it comes to the point that they should be revising the codes that they're using. That usually someone has some sort of copy. Even the older manuals, it may be just a slight restructuring that might have happened, but usually the vast majority of the material in the reference materials are the same, as long as you just know generally where you should be looking for it, unless you, and if the code just got restructured, just be aware of where that ended up translating over to. ACI for concrete, they had it one way. They just came out with a new way that is completely different than what the old way was, but all the materials are still grouped together the same way. So as long as you just know that it was in the back, now it's in the front, as long as you just know that, and you know what the materials that you're looking for, then you'll still be fine with that. You just need to make sure you know what the format of the new code is.
They will give you.
And you see that ABET does not, generally, I don't think they gave a lot of notice before they switched over from bring your own to we're gonna give you. the
no, they
reference.
released a schedule and it said, starting January, what was that, 22, these tests will be given as computer-based tests.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, all right, well, that's me. It's not me. I guess I'm taking computer-based tests.
So yeah, you gotta kind of keep your ears open or have a sense if any of those changes are afoot. If you're studying from one version and then they switch the version or something like that, you have to. kind of be
You can see them on the screen, which ones are still in the pencil
I
paper.
think they're all computer-based now, right?
I think there's still a
Yeah.
couple, the
Yeah.
ones that say once per year, I think are still on.
But it
So, like,
says
little,
CBT,
like-
No,
but it says
it's
CBT.
That's
Yeah,
computer
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
maybe they all are.
There's like, I
Maybe
think
you
there's
can't
only a
take it at
handful
all.
of different exams that are canceled.
Because they don't want to grade them.
Where there was a schedule where they're gonna flip, but I think by middle of 2023, they were all gonna be computer-based. But by version, I mean like also versions of references, like if they say,
Yeah.
you go on today and it says this version of this reference or this manual is what they're gonna use, it could be a very short period of time before they switch over to an updated one or something like that. On their toes.
So yeah, there's a lot of information that we gave you tonight, but I highly recommend staying connected with ASCE. I'm sure things change very quickly and maybe someone you know just passed it and they can give you a rundown on how the exam was, or maybe you don't have a manual that, your buddy does, then you can borrow it for studying. So I think having this network of people who are like-minded and have similar goals and, are all working towards the same thing is hugely important and will benefit you in the long run. And then you have opportunities to give back to students like we are today and, understand that we were in your shoes. And I found it greatly helpful when I was a student and I had, ASCE members come and talk to me. And now I can pass on that knowledge. So I would highly recommend staying involved. That's right.
Anyone, just like closing thought, I have a sample PE exam here, an official copy. If anyone wants to, skim through it and see the type of questions they ask, it'll be here if you want to check it out.
It's very simple, it's not the same questions, but the look is the same look, and that look as the FE is correct.
I believe so.
It's kind of like where the FE is like a 3-step kind of problem, like each question is like 3 steps, let's say. The PE is like 4 steps. Like you have to think a little bit further past the initial, 3 steps, I guess. They're very similar, but it's just that little bit, that extra step that you take to think about it is what would separate you from passing the PE or not passing the PE.
I would just say like the NCEES practice exams are probably the closest,
You're gonna get.
the closest you're gonna get to the real practice problems. So if you're gonna buy any practice problems, that's probably the one to get.
Yes,
That's what I did. I did that for a month. I just hammered an FE practice exam for 4 weeks or 3 weeks and then took it.
And
passed
usually
first
the
try.
ones that you purchase take a bunch of questions from recent previous versions. It may not be the one that ended 2022, but it may be questions from a bunch of different 2022 exams that they then compile into the booklet for you to try out. So it's not one particular exam, it's spread amongst different ones that they released.
And for scheduling, again, I know that this is like going way back in our conversation, but for scheduling, if you want to take your FE, I know that you guys have to wait till 2024, but if you want to take your FE right after you graduate, but theoretically, scheduling wise, it will fill up very quickly. Like for me, I wanted to take my FE right after I graduated, in like May or June, and I looked at it in February to register, and the earliest I could do it was July, like the earliest. So keep that in mind, that it does fill up those months very quickly. So do that in advance.
That's because it's not only engineers taking the test, it's like other professions taking the test with you. So it's not about.
Based on the test center
The test
availability.
center, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
about the
And
rules.
Long Island in particular,
Has one.
it's Islandia is the one test center for basically all Long Island. The
Yes.
next one is in Brooklyn, and there's
Right.
2 in Brooklyn.
And I was,
Yeah, the Pearson View, and then the next nearest ones are then across the Sound in Connecticut. So,
There's
They're
so
probably
many
giving
all
exams in a bunch of
Yeah.
different professions, not just.
So they're all
Yeah,
the
there's
same.
nursing and
All kinds of exams at those centers, so, yeah.
And you can shop around. So if you're like, I really want to take this in July, and Islandia is full and has no days in July, and you really want to take it in July, you can choose like the Brooklyn testing center. Yes.
Do you guys know like how far ahead the exam dates are announced?
I mean, it's year round, so they kind of just offer them all year round. I don't know how far in advance you can go, but like, I know
I
people
think
who
you could go
registered.
to the end
Of,
of
like, the
any given
year.
year,
Yeah.
basically. I perused one, when I went to the register for my PE, I was just perusing to see how far out. I think I could have went all the way to August when I was looking in December for the test that I took only 2 weeks ago. So it's like you have a long, it's any day that's available to test, they will have it ready for you because it's auto-generated right then and there for whoever's taking it that day.
Do yourself a favor and register and have that date down, because then that gives yourself a deadline. Because when I didn't have a deadline, I was like, oh, I'm gonna take it sometime in July. Then, now it's like May and I'm like not studying, or, like have that day and get that in your head, like it's a deadline. Like you need to study by that point, because otherwise, if you're like me and you procrastinate until the last minute, like you will not study until there is that day. So even then I procrastinate, but that's a whole other discussion about my time management skills.
And if you're crazy like me, I recommend driving to the testing center
Yes.
prior to your exam, walking
Oh.
to the door. Yeah.
Never mind, that's
All right,
crazy.
I
I was like, yeah,
I
try
do
to
all
get there.
Okay, I get nervous when I can't find a room, happens on my way here.
Same,
And start to like
same.
miss signs that are right in front of you. So I did the test drive, I knew exactly how long it was gonna take me to get there, I knew exactly where the room was. Like I said, a little crazy, but totally worth it. Took away just a little bit of the stress that morning.
I'll Google map it, because yeah,
That
I'm too
wasn't enough for me.
lazy to go out. Like it's not happening.
I stayed in the hotel the night before
Yeah.
Where did you take it?
in Jersey.
I also stayed in a hotel, but I took it in Atlantic City. So the night before I was in ACs.
And if you guys definitely feel like you need to take a stressor, like a way to de-stress before the exam, set the day beforehand just to relax, do what you want to do, just get your mind off of things. If you feel like you want to do that for the day before, so you're not constantly crunching, you just want to kind of give yourself that breather of like ready to go.
Not me. That was the most stressed I've ever been in my life. There was no de-stressing.
Yeah, make a study schedule for yourself.
Yeah.
And for love of God, include rest days.
It's the group picture.
Include rest days in your schedule.
Sorry.
And I highly recommend not.
Yeah, no, everybody.
I don't know why I'm invited to these things. I have horrible time management. Like, I am the worst example you can follow. I've listened.
Time management,
No.
the greatest, but decent.
You stress me out.
I know, I stress me out. What do you mean?
Stop stressing everyone out.
I have no advice to give other than don't be rich.
And don't go
Oh.
I was pointing at my body.
Should we do like a football draft picture?
I mean, at this point, we can.
Do I have to come back?
We basically do.
All right,
Is everybody?
everyone ready?
Oh, sorry.
All right, 1, 2, 3, ASCE.
ASCE.
You want live or not?
If we're gonna say it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
All right.
Yes, I'm good. Yes, I'm good. Yeah, I've been to that, and I also took a couple of pictures, so you get to see me.
It's like, oh yeah, it's like every single
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was good enough just to say.
Yeah, like, it's actually
If anybody wants one of my business cards, I have them up here if you want to get in contact.
So Kevin, you ran the business card?
Yes, I'm ready actually.
Well, you ran too.
Yeah, they're actually.
That's okay.